It was a freak show in Indy with the safeties showing out on the day with some mind-blowing numbers in the 40. And we're going to go over a few current Jets players who may have the biggest impact on the Jets plans. Draft plans on draft day. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation Radio, JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web, where I will hopefully not be tripping over my words because I'm popping cough drops like crazy. Anyway, what that display of athleticism from the safeties yesterday in Indy was absolutely nuts. I mean, I just thought this is a freak show. We thought with the linebackers the day before, with some of the numbers they were putting up, what an incredible performance it was for that group. We had, I believe, 7 guys run 4.4 or better. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, actually, yeah, if you count the 4.4s, I was actually looking at the sub 4.4s before going live. You had 3 guys run 4.4s, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, 7 guys run sub 4.4. Absolutely. I mean, if you need a safety, and look, it's not just about the 40s, right? And I say this every year. It's funny that we talk about how the combine and 40 times aren't the be all end all. And then guys go out and run these ridiculous 40s, and everyone's like, oh, draft these dudes, draft. But some of these guys are just straight up good ball players. One guy in particular that I'm pretty interested in, Robert Spears Jennings out of Oklahoma. Full disclosure, hadn't watched him until literally 2 or 3 days ago. And I honestly wasn't even sure he was at the combine because there's so many players to go over. Sometimes what I do, I know I've watched hundreds of players, but I'll hop onto a draft site that has a full log of hundreds of players, and I'll just scroll as far down to the bottom as I can, and I'll look for a guy I'm not familiar with who played in a major program and pop on his film. And I did that with Robert Spears Jennings the other day, watched him against Ole Miss, and I was like, damn, this dude like diagnoses quick, comes downhill, good tackler. Look, I didn't think he had 4.32 speed. He looked fast, but I didn't think he was that fast. So this is a guy until 48 or whatever 76 hours ago, I wasn't that familiar with him. Watched that game, came away really impressed, and then I was like, oh wow, he's in India. I didn't even see him on the list, or maybe I did and it didn't stand out because I wasn't familiar with him. But that dude had himself a really nice day, working out. Again, Oklahoma safety. These guys were flying. It was ridiculous. His 10-yard split was really good at 1.5. 1.51, 35-inch vert, 10.5 broad. These guys showed out. The safeties had themselves a hell of a day. Like I said, Lorenzo Styles had the best 40, record-setting 40 actually, for safeties. Ran a 4.27, which is a first in Indy. So that's a big day for him. Toriano Pride, the corner out of Mizzou, ran a 4.32. Treydan Stukes, who's been getting a lot of love lately, the safety out of Arizona, 4.33. Mentioned Thiedemann, he ran a 4.35. Just crazy. Dalen Everett out of Georgia, 4.38. Oh, I apologize. I included I just sorted it by 40s. I had a couple corners in there when I said the total numbers. Kenyon Sadiq, 4.39, insane number, but obviously not a safety. But either way, no matter how you slice it, these guys absolutely put on a show. And every year, man, these players just get more athletic, and guys who 4.4s used to be so rare, and now we're seeing. I mean, we're only on day 2 of the combine. Even if you go 4.45, because that always felt like to me like that's when you're in the low 4.4s, that's the truly elite speed category, and probably got 13, 14, 15 guys who have done that already. Used to be super rare. This is just an incredible showing by these guys. And again, it bodes well for the Jets because you need a safety. And Caleb Downs didn't even run, and he's the best in the group. I don't know. Look, I don't know if he's going to be running a 4.2 or 4.3, but Caleb Downs might be the best safety. Well, I think he is the best safety in the group. But you throw these guys in, and you're going to have a lot of options if you're the New York Jets, if you're any team that needs a safety. And I think maybe this means if you don't get Downs at 2, if that's not your target, maybe it stings a little less because you feel like, all right, we can get somebody at 33. Even if you trade down from 33 and, move to like 35, 36, 37, you're probably still going to be able to get a solid safety prospect there. Bud Clark, who was my guy before the season, it's like I'm happy for him that he's blowing up like this, but I kind of wish he would have stayed low profile. Bud Clark got things started and ran a 4.41, and I was like, oh man, that's going to be one of the best safety times. And like the next 3 or 4 guys beat it. So it was crazy stuff, but Clark has helped himself tremendously through the postseason, the pre-draft process. Obviously, got a ton of love during the Senior Bowl, and now he's having himself a nice showing down at the combine. So great news for him. Today we'll see the wideouts, and I tweeted this out a few minutes ago. If you missed it, this is the one of the topics I wanted to hit on. As I said, wideouts will be working out. Jets need a wide receiver, and a lot of people talking about, do you take one at 16? Do you take one at 33? Do you take one? I've seen some people say take Carnell Tate at 2. Not a lot, but I've seen some people say that. So everyone's sort of, determined for this team to get a wide receiver. And the way I look at it is, if one of these wide receivers went out there today, what are we, day 3 of workouts, right? Day 3 in Indy, the wideouts are going to work out. If a wide receiver were to go out there today on day 3 and show up at 6'2", 6'3", run a sub 4.35 40, have great hands, have plenty of film, playing at a major program, having some really good performances against top-tier teams, nobody would complain if the Jets used to pick on that guy. Nobody would be upset. You'd be like, oh, decent size, elite speed, really good hands, good production at a high level. And they already have that guy. A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell came to this team last year and had himself, one really good game and then disappeared. But in this offense, you name me a wide receiver who wouldn't have disappeared. So my hope is that because if you watch him on film, he was getting open. That wasn't the problem. My hope is that the New York Jets look at what A.D. Mitchell did on film and feel like we've got a wide receiver too. We just didn't have a quarterback to get him the ball. So we're not dying for a receiver. We don't need to take one at 16. And this isn't saying there may not be better options, but when you have as many holes to fill as the Jets do you use one, especially a premium pick? Do you use a premium pick at a spot where you feel like, we think we have a guy? Because, newsflash, you're not winning the Super Bowl this year. So why not go into this thing and say, you know what? Let's prioritize, we're going to assemble our board, but yes, we are going to consider need. And maybe because we have Garrett Wilson and A.D. Mitchell, and don't forget Isaiah Williams didn't get a ton of targets last year, but when he did, he looked all right. If you want to pencil him in as your wide receiver 4, Garrett Wilson 1, A.D. Mitchell 2, mid-late round draft pick / free agent addition, Wan'Dale Robinson maybe, as your 3, and then Isaiah Williams as your 4, and then go from there to build your room, whether you want to carry 5 guys, 6 guys. I think the Jets have the pieces to say, you know what, we can go. And then if A.D. Mitchell doesn't work out and you're wrong on him, then you say, okay, well, the next year receiver is a priority. Because again, you're not going to the Super Bowl this year. And you're not filling every hole you have on the roster in one draft and one free agent period. So there might be some spots where you have to gamble a little bit. And I'd be fine gambling with A.D. Mitchell being your wide receiver 2. And if you swing and miss, okay, fine. We'll take a receiver next year when we know we don't have one. But this year, there's reason to believe you do have one. And again, don't point me to the box scores and say, oh, look at the lack of production. I don't care who your receivers were this year, especially late in the year. Brady Cook, as much as, excuse me, this damn bronchitis. As much as Brady Cook was a guy that I really liked out of college, he was clearly not ready. He was deer in the headlights. There were times he held onto the ball way too long, took a bunch of sacks he didn't need to take, but he's a rookie UDFA playing on a bad football team. And once he was in there, he was a part of the reason for that. If if we're being fair. So I think if you're going to bring in a quarterback, which is the plan, there was actually, we'll touch on this in a bit. Actually, cover it now. I believe I was an ESPN article that that had Malik Willis and the Jets as a predicted pairing. That'd be fantastic. That would be fantastic. Look, you don't have a quarterback. And people, you can say, oh, well, Glenn, he's going to get $30 million a year. Look, A, you have the cap space. B, that's what you pay for quarterbacks nowadays. If you have a quarterback who you believe is going to be your starter and they are young with a high ceiling, they cost $30 million. I mean, what do you want? Do you want to be good or no? And I'm not saying Malik Willis guarantees you'll be good, but he gives you a shot. Oh, let's save money and get a quarterback who sucks. Let's go get Marcus Mariota. Look at all the money we'll save. Great, great. And you'll win 4 or 5 games. You won't get the first pick. You won't get Arch. You'll be out of the running for that, and you still won't have a quarterback. With Malik Willis, there's a chance. There's a chance of development. There's a chance he becomes your guy. And with having some decent receivers to throw to, like I said, I'm not saying don't draft a receiver. And there are some good ones in this class. There are some guys you can get in the middle late rounds who could complement, who could nicely complement the group I just mentioned. So receiver, do you take one? Absolutely. And I'm not saying you don't, I'm not sitting here saying it'd be the worst thing in the world if they did take one at 16. I could live with it, but I get, and I've said this in years past. In the offseason, I often find myself thinking, there'll be a handful of players that I always say, man, I wish I knew what the Jets really thought about that guy. I wish I knew publicly they love everybody. But I would love to know if they're watching A.D. Mitchell on film and looking at each other and going, this guy's our 2. This guy can be a 2. He's good enough. I'd love to know that. Because if they are dramatically changing their draft plans. Now, look, if they're in there going, you know what? He's not. He's fast. Maybe he'll be a 4. Maybe, whatever. I'm not pretending to know what they're thinking. I'm just saying I know what tools the guy has. I know he looked solid when he, for the very few times the quarterback play looked decent. And I don't think it's all that crazy. Remember, he went 20th in the second round, I believe. He was getting a lot of first round love. People felt like he could be a round 1 guy. He had round 1 tools, round 1 speed. He just went to a team in Indy where they were so loaded at receiver he couldn't get on the field. Then he comes to the Jets and gets on the field, has a good game or two, and then the quarterback play is an absolute disaster, and he does nothing. So I'm not putting that on him, and that's why you don't obsess over the box scores. Sometimes you got to turn on the film and go, oh, look, he's open. Oh, he's open again. Oh, he's open again. No one's delivering the ball, but he's open. So you start to envision, all right, what if we'd had a good quarterback there? What if Brady Cook was further along and he pulled the trigger? And then all of a sudden, wide receiver isn't this huge pressing need. And you can look at a guard at 16. Or just look any number of holes that this team has. If they view wide receiver 2 as not being a huge hole, then you're obviously not as pressed to use a pick there. But one spot where, really 2 spots, if we're being honest, where they might be looking to use a pick that really no one's talking about. I take that back. Not no one, because I did see someone mention it on the forums at JetNation the other day. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess I'm not the only one sort of having this thought process, which is, I know Azareye'h Thomas played well last year when given an opportunity. Actually played really well. If you go back and watch, he did a really solid job as a rookie corner. But between him and then Jarvis Brownlee in the slot, I've talked about this in the past. I liked Jarvis Brownlee at FSU. I liked him at Louisville. I thought he was impressive at the Senior Bowl. I said when they made a trade that it was a great trade in terms of what you gave up to get him, because he could be a starting type of player. And he had some good moments last year where you're like, okay, great. That's why I said he would be a good player. He had some moments where, he's a physical guy, plays with a killer mentality. No doubt about that. But I hear Jets fans talk about him like he's an established top flight starting nickel. And I think, okay, he's had some moments, but I'm not quite at that point where I'm looking at him like he's the guy. And then you look at Stevens and Thomas. Thomas was dinged up. Stevens, I mean, you got to give Stevens credit. He was far better than anybody said he would be. And I'm the first one to say it. I thought it was a disastrous signing. You go out and get a guy who gave up 800 yards the previous year, receiving yards, and you're like, what are you doing, paying this guy this money to start? And then week one, he was an absolute disaster. Gave up multiple touchdowns, bunch of big plays. And then he really, week 2, 3, 4, looked a little better. And then he just really just settled in and had a good season. He wasn't great, but he was okay. I mean, do I love him as a CB1? Not really. Probably better suited as a CB2. But if the Jets feel differently and they feel like, you know what, he did a good job as a 1 last year, and we liked what we saw from Thomas as a 2, that's fine. But do they feel so good that if there's a really good corner still on the board when they're picking at 33 or 44, that they won't pull the trigger on a corner? At least at some point, even if you wait till day 2 or 3. I don't see a lot of folks mocking a corner to the Jets. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. But as I'm watching that corner group and I'm looking at the Jets depth chart and the lack of proven success or sustained success, even in the case of Brandon Stevens, like I said, give him his flowers, give him all the credit he deserves. Much better than we thought he would be. But you do have to wonder, was that the real guy, or was the Baltimore guy the real guy? You hope, like, new coach, new system. Maybe this is who he is now. But you do see sometimes where guys have like one blip year where it's like, oh wow, this dude's way better than we thought, and then they regress to the norm the following year, and then they're giving up a ton of plays. So do the Jets really feel like they're set at all 3 corner spots? Do they feel Brandon Stevens is a legit 1 and that Thomas is a legit 2 and they really don't need a nickel because they have Brownlee? Like I said, love Brownlee's mentality, love the how fierce he is. He's a ferocious guy. But listen, there's a reason why Tennessee was willing to give him up in exchange for a late day 3 pick, and it was because he had a ton of penalties there. And then he had I forget the exact number, but I remember him tweeting out, "Won't happen again, Jets fans," because he had a game with multiple penalties, and you're like, okay, this is why Tennessee traded him. And he can tweet that it's not going to happen again. But I mean, do you think honestly that while he was in Tennessee, he never thought to try to fix the issue with the penalties? I mean, look, that's his play style. He's an aggressive guy. If the Jets are willing to live with that, they're willing to live with that. I'd be a little bit surprised by that because of Aaron Glenn, and he does stress discipline. They did improve on the penalties last year. But if Brownlee is a guy who's going to commit penalties at that rate, then I don't see how you look at him and think, okay, he's set. Like, look, Darren Muji's done a nice job. Darren Muji's made some really good trades. He's brought in some players who have been very, very effective and some players who I think can be even more effective in the future. But I think it's one of those things where because he's made a few moves, everyone just assumes they're all good. And like, okay, yeah, good. We got Brownlee now. We're set at nickel. And I'm like, I like the player, but I need to see more before I feel like, oh, they're set there and they don't need to add a body. So I think at corner and receiver, in AD Mitchell, you have a guy that could alleviate the need for a premium pick. And then at corner, the 3 of them, between Thomas, Stevens, and Brownlee, do they really feel like those 3 guys are locked in, at their starting jobs, and they don't need to either spend big on a free agent or spend big in terms of an early draft pick to add a corner? I don't know. We'll see how the Jets feel about that. But I just feel like Brownlee is the guy that for someone who has played as few games as he has as a Jet and had as many flags as he has throughout his career with the Jets and Titans, I'm surprised at how many people just kind of feel like, yeah, he's fine. He's the answer. We don't need a nickel. So we'll see. Real quick, we'll hop in the chat, address some of these. Rich, good buddy Rich, says this will be heavy defensive draft for the Jets. Has to be. It's got to be. Like I said the other day, at least on the offense, you've got some really, really good pieces in place. You're set at both tackle spots. You've got Joe Tippmann. One guy we were going to talk about is Josh Myers here in a second. But even if you stick with him, he's an okay center. He's not great. But you're fine. You're set at 4 of your 5 spots. You need 1 lineman. Now, look, could you upgrade from Myers? Yes, and I've called for that many times. Let Myers be a backup. But even if you don't, if you keep Myers, you've got, let's say, a below average but not terrible center. You've got a really good guard in Tippmann and 2 really good tackles in Olu and Membu. So you need 1 more lineman to round out your starting 5, and 3 of the 5 are very good. I would put Tippmann in the very good category. And then you've got Garrett Wilson. You've got, again, AD Mitchell. Isaiah Williams, don't sleep on him. I know everyone talks about the return stuff. Look at him when he got targeted last year. It didn't happen a ton, but he looked solid. He, like I said, if you pencil him in as your fourth receiver right now, I guess Arian Smith probably gets that by default because of the draft status. But either way, wherever you put him on the depth chart, you've got some guys. You've got some guys who can catch the football. Then, of course, you've got Brees running behind a good offensive line. If Brees doesn't, if we don't see a tag and trade type thing, which wouldn't shock me. But there are enough pieces on offense, and Mason Taylor, he's got a lot to prove. Look, it was his rookie year. Again, the offense was terrible. He had 2 good games early on, and then disappeared the rest of the way. So I get it. He had the game-winning touchdown against Cincy, but in terms of there was no volume. You didn't see any games where it was 60, 70, 80 yards after sort of week 4 or 5. So you need to see more out of him. But either way, that whole offense that I just mentioned, that offensive line with Garrett, with AD Mitchell. I saw someone mention in the chat, Mechie. The only reason I didn't mention him, his contract status. He's like a restricted, exclusive rights free agent, something like that. I think he will be back, but there is just the fact that he's not definitely under contract. I held off on mentioning Mechie. But absolutely, you throw him in the mix, and there you go. You've got another guy. Let's see. Rich asks, what position will the Jets address in free agency other than QB? Well, that's part of this. The part of this question, right, is do they feel they need a corner? I think they could use one. I think that it would be, and look, I know there's Stiggers and there are some young guys on the on the roster who they like, but I think you probably, unless they plan on going with, and you can't always look too hard at what you're planning on doing in the draft. Because look, if you love Awani, you don't know that he's going to be there. So if there's a guard out there who you really like and you need one, do you go get him? Or is there, do they look at Xavier Newman? Do they look at Cole Laval? Do they feel like one of those two is ready to make the leap and become a starting guard? Again, not saying they will, but internally, again, these are the conversations they have. And I was a big Laval guy. Once the Jets signed him, watched him in the USFL. He had a really good preseason that year. I thought he was a solid player. Huge dude, listed at 350, played center at Hawaii, and impressed. Again, these guys, especially when you get like undrafted guys, low draft picks, these types of guys, and when they stick out, or stick around through multiple regimes, I think that's impressive. So remember, the Jets, this regime did not sign Laval. They did not sign Xavier Newman initially, but those guys hung around. So maybe if they feel like they can develop them, maybe is one of them a starter. We'll have to wait and see what they do there. Let's see. D-Man says, could Malachi Fields be in play for the Jets? I thought he would. I mean, look, it's not impossible. I viewed him as a guy who you might be able to get in the middle rounds, but now that he's sort of blown up, and now you're hearing people talk about him as a top 50 pick. Look, if the Jets liked him that much, they could, but I don't know. It's the Mitchell thing. I don't know how they feel about him. If they don't think AD Mitchell is any good, then absolutely Malachi Fields is in play. A lot. Chris Bell is in play. A lot of these receivers, Casey Concepcion, even though he's not the biggest guy, they may want to prioritize a boundary guy. I'm not sure, but there are some good receivers that you can get early on in this class that the Jets will prioritize if they do in fact feel that that they don't love what they've got with Mitchell. Could Emmanuel McNeil Warren be an option? 100%. Look, as I just said, if you need a safety, this is a good year for you. And the Jets need a safety, and there are a lot of good ones. And there are some, as much as I love Caleb Downs, I always talk about supply and demand when it comes draft time, right? Because I always feel like, what's the drop off? Now look, Josh Downs, arguably the best player in the class, that's fine. But you're still getting a really good safety, or you have a chance. We don't know who's going to be there. But when you look at the safeties who are out there in this class, there are going to be some really good guys who will, Jalen Kilgore, we haven't even mentioned today. He's a super versatile guy. Months ago, watching him, I thought this is a guy any defensive-minded coach would love to have because he can do a lot of different things for you. But Jalen Kilgore, like I said, Thieneman, VJ Payne, he ran a much faster 40 than I expected to. The guy I mentioned earlier, Bud Clark. So there are so many safeties in this group that for teams like the Jets, any one of these guys could be in play, and it's a matter of how early they want to use a pick on one. And look, we've talked about how Malachi Moore had himself a nice rookie season, but did he, even with that being the case, they don't have another safety, and the experiments, everybody they tried last year, things didn't work out. Tony Adams is probably on his way out. Andre Cisco, who I was really high on, I thought he'd have a big year. He did close to nothing and then got hurt. I'd be surprised if they bring him back. It's just been a it's been like so many positions on this roster. I do have to laugh sometimes when people go, "Oh man, the Jets haven't had a good safety in a long time." I'm like, the Jets haven't had a good lots of things in a long time. When was the last time the Jets had a dominant tight end or a very good tight end? When's the last time the Jets had a very good or dominant safety? I mean, we all know about quarterback, right? They just went a million years without a 1,000-yard rusher before Brees Hall finally broke that number. So the Jets are pretty bad at most spots over the past several years. And now, now they draft the odd good player. And now that we just trade them for picks. I mean, you look at the talent that they've exported, under this new regime. Again, I understand this, the financials of Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, now Jermaine Johnson, who isn't in the same level as those guys, but he is a good player. A lot of very talented early picks who were going to be the nucleus, especially the young guys anyway. Aaron Rodgers was never going to be around for more than a few years, and it's just been. You finally assembled some young talent. Now it's all gone. Back to the drawing board, which is fine. If you get it right, nobody's going to care. Let's see. Back in the chat, KD says KD55 says I've seen too many Jets influencer channels discourage the Vega pick at 16. Oh my God, man. Listen, I've said it before. People love fantasy football. And if you're going to draft a player early on, he better get touchdowns or sacks, or that's no fun. I can't draft a guard for my fantasy team, so the Jets better not draft one in real life. Awani would be a phenomenal pick at 16. Listen, to each his own. But people love dudes who run fast and score touchdowns and get quarterbacks. Those guys are fun, but you got to win in the trenches. You got to win in the trenches. This isn't fantasy football. It's not Madden. You can't just draft a bunch of guys who are 99 speed and air it out and throw a million touchdowns. That's not real life. KD says, hopes I'm doing well. Working today. Oh man, I'll be working later too. I'm gonna have a hard time catching the whole combine today, but I will. The beauty of that is I can watch it overnight and talk about it tomorrow, whatever I miss. Rich says they'll definitely draft a safety. Yeah, you got to draft one. And then Rich says safety or wide receiver at 16. Again, I don't disagree that that's a possibility. I'm just trying to envision, if you're trying to put a team together and finally get competitive, you got to rank your needs, in some way. And I think, and like I said, I could be 1,000,000% wrong. The Jets might be sitting in there right now, kicking themselves, going, "Damn it, why did we include AD Mitchell in that deal?" I don't know. I have no idea. But I suspect, if I had to guess, that there is at least a chance that the Jets are watching the film from last year and going, "This guy can play. This guy can be our 2. Let's go." Like I said, let's go sign Wan'Dale Robinson. Let's draft somebody who can be a 3, and continue trying to develop Arian Smith, continue trying to develop Isaiah Williams. So they've got some bodies. I think Mitchell is a big part of it, and then Josh Myers is the last guy I wanted to mention him briefly. But in terms of a center, I've been saying for a while now, I think this team takes a center in the mid rounds. Love Logan Jones, but this is a very good center class as well. There is some depth here. You can get guys early, you can get guys middle rounds. Late will be a little bit tougher, but I think if you can get like Logan Jones in the 4th round, that type of thing, and try to work him in as a starter, I can see that happening. His teammate Bo Stevens, I feel like I can't mention one without mentioning the other, because watching them together at Iowa, I was just like, man, get me both these players. And as it turns out, the Jets could use a guard, and the Jets could use someone to compete at center. So by all means, give me Logan Jones and Bo Stevens, and let them work together at trying to steal some jobs on that Jets offensive line, and start turning this damn thing around. Part 85, and hopefully the quarterback. Hopefully, the projections of Malik Willis to the Jets turn out to be true, and Malik Willis turns out to be a player. But in a perfect world, you sign him to 2 years, so you're limiting the long-term commitment. And if he doesn't work out, then you take a quarterback next year. And then you have that quarterback compete with Willis in year 1, and then you let Willis move on and hopefully hand the reins to the rookie no later than the start of year 2. That'll wrap this one up, Jets fans. Have a good one. Combine today, the final day of the big workouts. There will be much to talk about, and free agency soon to follow. Have a good one, folks.